since I started working with KAFC 10 years ago, KAFC was formed later, but with the people on the issue. I've been asked a lot to give an interview for the media as well as a lot of scholars, and every time their approach is like I was born to become an activist for comfort women, which is not true. However, I really appreciate all the talks that you have been giving and we have been hearing yesterday and today, because these studies and the researches done and analysis done by the scholars and the researchers and the journalists, these provide the soil and the nutrients to the movement that we're trying to build in order to bring justice for the grandmas. So I really want to thank to all the presenters who have been talking in the past to yesterday and today. I became involved in this issue in 2007, and I want to really focus on the ultimate goal of this movement, as someone asked in the question, and what was the components of the movement in the past 10 years, at least from my perspective and the KAFC's perspective. So to me, it seems like the comfort women movement started in the early 1990s in Korea, and it was actually really the grandmas who have been leading this movement by speaking out and breaking the silence. And a lot of activists came together to support their causes, and they pushed this movement and gained ground internationally. They went to UN, they went to different countries, they brought grandmas, and grandmas gave testimonies. So it was really those activities that have been providing the voice to the movement. However, it was largely unknown until the 2000s, and the main approach to resolve this issue in the first 20 years, I would say, is to approach it in the legal manner, like filing lawsuit in Japan and the United States. And by early 2000s, all those lawsuits actually have failed. Japanese government was not going to give in, and the Japanese, Supreme Court was not going to render the decision for the victims against their own government. So, thanks to the tireless work by the WCCW and some of the leaders like Dong-Seok Kim from KACE, case which is based in New York, New Jersey area. They started, working with Congressman Mike Honda based on the resolutions that have been introduced in the House of Representatives by late Congressman Lane Evans. And what they did differently than before was to actually create a grassroots movement based on community. So it was the Korean community that actually started the nationwide campaign to pass House Resolution 121 by collecting signatures, visiting local district, representatives' offices, making phone calls. And this picture shows, the volunteers sorting the petitions by the zip code so that each petition can be sent to the corresponding House of Representatives member. So this was the work, that really gained a lot of traction in 2007. And this is the campaign that I first was introduced to join. And we also invited grandma for this campaign from Korea. The Grandma Lee Yong-soo, who already had testified at the U.S. Congress in February of 2007, even before I joined this movement, and along with Kim Gun-ja and Jan Ruffer-Hearn, made a huge impact, and we invited her again to do more of a lobbying effort in the US. So this became the first largest Korean American-led grassroots movement that actually made an impact and actually drew out a result at the U.S. Congress that on July 30th, the resolution has passed unanimously, and these are the politicians who actually was really strongly supportive of the resolution. It doesn't show the late Congressman Lane Evans or the late Congressman Tom Lantos, but they also were strong supporters. And it also shows late Congressman Annie Falomap-Vega. So it was very successful, and it resonated internationally partly because in 2007, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who was the Prime Minister for the first time, tried to revise the history and tried to deny the comfort women history. So it gained even more resonation internationally that other countries passed similar resolutions. So we thought, this was the immediate goal, to pass House Resolution 121 in U.S. Congress, and because U.S. has such a great impact on Japan, and Japan is such a strong ally of the United States, that we are going to make an impact on Japan. However, it didn't change the position of Japanese government at all. So we thought maybe we should do more. And it was again the Korean American Civic Empowerment and the case, at the time it was called the KAVC, and led by Mr. Dong-Seok Kim, that had this idea of building memorial in public place. And the mantra, actually, that we were told over and over again from the very beginning of this campaign to pass House Resolution 121 in 2007 was that this is not a Korean-Japan issue. This is not about Japan bashing. This is such a large crime against humanity and violation of women's rights, and because of the nature that it was a state-led sexual slavery system, and the scale of the crime, it was a crime against humanity because of the nature that this was a rape against women during wartime. This is an universal issue because it affects all women around the world, and it still impacts the women in the war zone. And because it's a women's issue, it is a human rights issue, and it is an American issue. So that was the approach we took, and we were told time and again to have that attitude. So of course there were people who who only saw this issue as a nationalistic approach that, Japanese did such a horrible thing that we have to get apology from them. However, we tried to educate our community as well as the other community that was not aware of this issue, that actually this is much bigger than that. This is about all women, this is about for future generation, and this is about an American, as American, we want to be a better society, so we want to pay attention to this issue. So that was the mantra that we have been repeating over and over again, sometimes successfully, sometimes unsuccessfully. And this was, and there was a Japanese government's backlash and opposition, and this is one of the mainstream media report about the anti-lobby.
Right over the George Washington Bridge outside of New York City, here in New Jersey, this small statue back here is causing major is here. It's paying tribute to the tens of thousands of young Asian women that were actually kidnapped from their families, abducted, and then served as sex slaves for the Japanese military men that were serving during World War II, causing a lot of controversy, obviously. Japanese parliament members came over here to New Jersey recently from Japan, asking that this statue be removed. Well, the community, the leaders here are saying that's not going to happen. For years, the women lived in cold, dark rooms. Those who refused were often killed.
Every woman, unless somebody talks about it, it will be forgotten.
Today in Palisades Park, New Jersey, where half the population is of Korean descent, her story and the story of many others, remembered through a small monument, teaching a history some would like to forget. The memorial has become a lightning rod of controversy. The mayor says Japanese officials recently paid him a visit and asked him to take it down.
They came and said that they have evidence that Comfort Women never happened. It was a group of women that lied.
And there's 61 Comfort women that are still alive living in Korea, according to the Comfort lady that you heard there in the piece. Her story is just so sad to hear. Her whole life was changed because of that experience in her teens and in her 20s. And she's saying she's speaking out now after all of these years. You know, these ladies are in their 80s and their 90s. Speaking out so that this doesn't happen to other women in the future. She doesn't want to pass away without you guys knowing her story. And also she wants to make sure this statue stands here in New Jersey.
So this was the news report that came out in 2012. And we included Grandma Bokdong Kim's interview in the Fox News clip, because she was visiting Glendale at the time in commemoration of 5th anniversary of House Resolution 121. So after coming to DC and having attending an event here, she came to Glendale, and we, with Grandma Bokdong Kim, had a like speaking events and exhibits, so that we raised awareness and we got support from the council members of Glendale, so that we would be able to erect a Comfort Woman Memorial in Glendale the next year. So in 2013, we successfully unveiled the girl statue, the Peace Monument in Glendale, California. And we really did focus on, helping the council members of Glendale to understand the nature of these issues, so that they would accept it not just as Korean American or Korean issue, but also as a general universal human rights issue, and that's what they did. So when Glendale had a hearing, dozens of Japanese people from Japan or some Japanese Americans, described by Emi Koyama and Professor Tomomi Yamaguchi yesterday, that those people showed up and said that same thing, that they were prostitutes, they were highly paid, and they were camp follower, and they actually were rebuked by the council members, saying that one of them said that, one of the speakers said that, oh, we never heard about it. We never heard about it in Japan. You never heard about it because Japanese government chose not to teach its people the reality and the truth of what that Imperial Army did in the Second World War. So those were the kinds of words that were, said to the deniers at the Glendale hearing, and the City Council made a decision to erect a memorial in 2013. So it was really important for us to bring the memorial or pass a resolution or declare a Comfort Woman Day in a public setting, public property. It was really important because that carried the power and strength and the recognition of the American public and American government, that this actually gives the voice and the acknowledgement that, that was really important to that the American government and American people are with the victims in their search for justice and the recovery of their human dignity. So Glendale Memorial was number 4 in public land. Fairfax County Memorial is number 5 in public land, and the Union City is number 6 in public land. And another action we did, again with a case, was to have events of having the victims, the survivors of the comfort women, meet with the victims of survivors of a Holocaust, and they connected right away, and they formed a sisterhood right away. So they had several of such meetings. We also had such meeting in Los Angeles, California, when Grandma Bokdong Kim came back to attend the unveiling of Glendale Memorial. And every year we celebrate House Resolution 121 passage in Washington, D.C., and WCCW also does that, and we do it in Los Angeles. And we are involved in public education. We go to universities like Harvard, Stanford, UCLA, and Fullerton University, and give lectures to the students, and try to talk, as much as possible. And we actually use this location of Glendale Memorial as the place of education and place of remembrance, that every time victims pass away, we try to have a memorial ritual. And many public officials also came to pay respect to the recently passed victims in recognition of what they did to speak out and to educate the public about it. In 2014, less than a year later after the Glendale Memorial was erected, the Japanese deniers, the history revisionist group, including Koichi Mara, who was a former professor at USC, as well as his new group, Got US, filed a lawsuit against Glendale, claiming that Glendale violated the supremacy clause by trying to interfere with the U.S.-Japan relationship diplomacy, trying to conduct a diplomacy where Glendale as a city does not have that authority. So this was actually a freedom of speech action. They did not make an issue with the history itself. Actually, they acknowledged that this happened and there were victims of this who went through immeasurable pain during war, but they did not dispute it in the law. So what they disputed was the process that, city of Glendale as a small city in California does not have the authority to interfere with the U.S.-Japan relationship. So, and the law firm that represented this plaintiff was Mayer Brown, and this is considered as like top 20 law firm in the United States. So when we saw that, copy of complaint, the officials of Glendale was not really concerned about the content or the cause of action in the complaint, but rather they were concerned about the reputation of the law firm representing the plaintiffs. Because in U.S. court, like it or not, it always, the reputation of the law firm and the size and, how much money they charge per hour, like $1,000 or $2,000, it really makes a difference at the law. So that's why, we try to find an equivalent law firm to represent the city of Glendale. So we successfully contacted Sidley Austin, who provided a pro bono representation for the city of Glendale, and we won. And they appealed, we won again, and appealed again in the U.S. Supreme Court, and it was interesting. Japanese government actually submitted an amicus brief on behalf of plaintiff saying that removing the Glendale Memorial from the Central Park of Glendale was a core national interest that Japanese government, strongly supported the position of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit. Of course, the court decided not to review the case, so the district court decision, which dismissed the complaint, became final this year. So we invited grandmas from House of Sharing in 2014. Here's Mr. On here. We went to visit the White House and the State Department to educate them about what comfort woman issue was, and we also formed a network with a case and the WCCW in 2015 when Prime Minister Abe was coming to United States to give an address to the joint meeting of Congress. So we had a huge petition drive, and we raised money to place an ad. So this is the demonstration. Grandma Lee was invited again, and we followed Prime Minister Abe wherever he went. We went to Harvard, we went to DC, there was a demonstration in San Francisco and Stanford and LA. And we also stood strongly against the 2015 agreement. This memorial actually became a very much of a place of unity among the communities, unlike some arguments by the history revisionists that this divides the community, but many Japanese Americans actually was very supportive from the very beginning. We also worked on the California textbook campaign. We collected 20,000 signatures or endorsement within 6 weeks, online and offline, and it was included in California statewide, the textbook for 10th grader. There are some problems that, the link was included. However, we're working on to develop the lesson plans so that the teachers can use it in their classrooms. We also helped Brookhaven near Atlanta, Georgia, to erect their own monument. And we worked with San Francisco. Judith will talk about San Francisco Memorial. So, as on behalf of KAFC, I made more than 30 trips to San Francisco in 2 years after 2015 September, when we invited Grandma Lee to speak at the hearing in San Francisco. There has been a lot of oppositions, and in fact, it was those deniers and oppositions that actually gave us more ground to talk about this issue and these, controversies. Media love controversies, right? I think academics love controversies as well, and because because there was a lawsuit, what is this about? When there was a lawsuit filed, someone looked into it and wrote a great article on Forbes magazine and saying that this is disgusting. How can a reputable law firm, represent such a case? History deniers, and then that ignited a huge debate in the law community that. Mayor Brown actually, they withdrew from the case, and they promised the plaintiffs that we'll return all the money that we received as an initial payment. We will provide free services until you find the law firm who will replace us that you will like. So they went great lengths to get out of that lawsuit, and then the plaintiffs found a very small law firm to replace it. So finally, I really want to focus on how we can resolve this issue. Actually, I think remembering and education is actually great and important work. However, as activists and with the grandmas who are the leaders of this movement, the most important thing is to hold the Japanese government, the criminal government, accountable. And in 2015, Korean government actually entered into this wrong agreement with Japanese government that said that it will finally and irreversibly resolve the comfort woman issue without including any of the victims outside of South Korea. That 1 billion yen, the payment from Japanese government to Korean government, that does not cover any of the grandmas, not even from North Korea, China, Taiwan, Philippines, Indonesia. So we think the most important element of properly resolving this issue is to include all those victims, according to the nature and the scale of the crime, and have a proper recognition and proper resolution, just like the Germany did for the Holocaust. They apologized, not only apologized, but made compensation. They prosecuted, punished it, and made memorials, teach it, ongoing education. So that's what we need to demand from the Japanese government. Apology is just the first step. It's not like an official recognition and apology is going to resolve everything. No. And this is such an important human rights issue that if we let this slide, it's going to repeat, and we see that happening all over again. So I think, what we need to do is to form a very strong alliance amongst the victim communities, especially in the United States, because U.S., all victim communities are represented in the United States, right? So we should form a very strong alliance and unified voice to pressure Japan, and that way, that path, I think, we are KAFC, CWJC, WCCW, and each and every one of you who are sitting in this conference room will be the path to the victory. So thank you so much.